What if Volodymyr Zelensky died tomorrow? No farewell speech, no transition plan, just breaking news from Kyiv. President Zelensky is gone. The world would freeze. Because for millions, he is not just a president, he is a symbol of resistance, hope, and defiance against a superpower. And if that symbol fell overnight, the war would enter its most dangerous phase yet. Within minutes, Ukraine's government would lock down. Air raid sirens would wail across Kyiv. Foreign embassies would go dark as leaders scrambled to verify what happened. For the Ukrainian people, already living through bombings, blackouts, and loss, this would feel like the sky falling twice. Zelensky has been their voice, their shield, their connection to the world. Without him, many would feel suddenly alone in the dark. The Ukrainian constitution says the Speaker of Parliament becomes acting president. But paper law means little when a nation is at war. Inside Kyiv's bunkers, ministers and generals would argue over succession. The military might demand temporary control. Intelligence chiefs could claim emergency powers. And foreign allies, the US, the EU, the UK, would pressure them to present unity within hours to avoid panic. Any hesitation could fracture the country's chain of command, just as missiles keep falling. At the front, soldiers would hear the news through radio static. Some would break down, others would swear revenge. But for a moment, confusion would set in. Who gives orders now? Whose strategy matters? Morale, Zelensky's greatest weapon, would plummet. Russia would see this instantly. Intelligence satellites and cyber spies would feed the Kremlin one message: Ukraine is leaderless. And that is when Moscow might launch its most aggressive offensive yet. Massive missile barrages, a push on Kyiv, an attempt to break the will of the army before a new government can form. Inside the cities, the reaction would be a mix of grief and rage. Civilians might pour into streets with flags and candles, and then into protests demanding revenge. Supermarkets would empty overnight. Banks would limit withdrawals. The internet could slow or crash under rumors of coup plots and foreign sabotage. A country already bleeding from war could tip into panic, not from bombs, but from the sudden absence of a unifying voice. In Washington, Brussels, and London, emergency meetings would begin within minutes. NATO commanders would quietly raise alert levels. Global markets would tumble. Oil and gas prices would skyrocket. World leaders would release statements of grief and support, but behind the scenes, they would argue over who to recognize as Ukraine's new leader. Any hint of division among allies would encourage the Kremlin to press its advantage. Meanwhile, millions of refugees across Europe would wonder, is it safe to go home now, or must we run again? The worst-case scenario isn't just military defeat, it's collapse from within. If rival factions in Kyiv begin fighting for power, Western aid could freeze. Supply lines would stagnate. Russia could cut deeper into Ukrainian territory and demand a ceasefire on its own terms. The dream of liberating occupied land could die with the man who inspired it, and a new government, born in panic and divided loyalties, might accept concessions that Zelensky never would. That's how wars end. Not with victory, but with exhaustion. Zelensky's image, the comedian turned commander in a green t-shirt, would instantly become immortal. Murals, monuments, streets named after him. He would be remembered as the man who stood his ground when the world doubted him. But his absence would leave a hole that no general or politician could fill. Because some leaders don't just govern, they hold a nation's soul together. When they fall, the soul shatters before the state does.